So I'm going to start right down there. I'm going to let birthday boy Kelvin introduce himself briefly, and we'll just walk right down the line.
So my name is Kelvin Lee. I'm the Institute Director for NIMBLE, which, yes, today is the first day that NIMBLE comes into formal existence. And I'm also on the faculty at the University of Delaware.
My name is Jorg. I work at a small biotech company in Cambridge, Massachusetts called Visterra, where I'm responsible for all things manufacturing. But before that, actually, up until the end of last year, I worked at a large biotech manufacturer called Biogen in the same function.
Hi, I'm Raj Batra. I'm the president of the Digital Factory Division here for Siemens US. I have walked thousands of manufacturing facilities here in the United States, so hopefully I can give you a pragmatic view of what that looks like and how the institutes play out. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Caralynn Nowinski Collens. I'm the CEO of UI Labs, which is the parent to one of the earliest institutes, the Digital Manufacturing and Design Innovation Institute.
And I think we already know you, Kelly.
I wish I could be General Justice for the next 20 minutes.
Well, I'm really going to be Sergeant Justice with a squad. That's what I'm going to be for 20 minutes. So I want to continue our discussion that we basically laid and start with the block of questions that we had looked at we thought might be of interest about how the institutes are working. And so why don't we just talk about DMDI a little bit? And I'll let you have the floor and just talk about how is it succeeding and the progress it's making and what you think is some exciting things about it.
All right, well, thanks so much for the opportunity to come talk today, and really appreciate the leadership of the caucuses and supporting this kind of conversation. So we are one of the oldest institutes. We turned 3 about 2 weeks ago. It was a great celebration. We had cake. But really, we've been really proud of what we've been able to accomplish in that time. And it wouldn't be without our partners, Siemens being one of our founding partners. And so I'll start there in terms of the ecosystem. What we've been able to talk about already today is, this robust network and these connections that form. When we first launched DMDII, we had signed up about 70 partners or so. We've more than quadrupled that. I think we're almost about 5 times as many partners in that time, and the connections are growing so that for every project we do, we have dozens of partners that are collaborating together for the very first time. So the bulk of what we do is focus on projects that are designed to get these technologies across that valley of death, technologies that are going to solve problems that companies can't solve on their own. That's why they're coming together in these networks to be able to solve them. We've got over 60 projects that are in progress today. Our first ones have just completed. Remember, we're still all young organizations. We've just had our first 5 projects complete. One of those projects that we're really excited about is how you can use new augmented reality technology or new wearable devices. So if anyone has Pokemon Go, kids might have these things. Imagine using that on a shop floor. How can you give workers new tools to be able to learn how to assemble new products much more quickly with much less error? And we're partnering in that particular project with the Rochester Institute of Technology and 3 small and mid-sized manufacturing companies that are testing out this technology on the shop floor and showing that it can not only accelerate the learning of workers, but it can also reduce the product development cycle, increase productivity, and ultimately that's what our industry needs to see to be more competitive here in the U.S.
Good, thank you. Raj, what I would like to do is ask you from an industry perspective and things like that, how do you see that value proposition?
Well, so first, thank you, General Justice. I also want to thank Senator Kuhn, Senator Drubin, Congressman Ryan, members of the caucus for all that you're doing to advance manufacturing here. Just from a Siemens perspective, we are a global company operating in 190 countries, but we feel all the pain that our customers feel because we're one of the world's largest manufacturers with 300 facilities all over the world. But in the U.S. specifically, we have 50,000 employees across 50 states and 60 manufacturing sites. And what's so critical about that is to be in close proximity with innovation and development to manufacturing operations. The general thinking here is if we can take our strong manufacturing base, the leading edge that we have in software innovation, we can really drive this new era of advanced manufacturing. So let me tie that to DMDII because that's where I personally have experience. Digitalization is going to change the framework of how U.S. manufacturers generate productivity and time to market. And time to market is really the most decisive factor that we see in industry today. So getting to market quick, it's not about proprietary things, but it's about using digital technologies in the ideation of design of a product to the manufacturability of the product. So what we've done at DMDII is built a model digital enterprise that shows how to really do this and what the art of the possible is, from, again, the design of a product all the way to the manufacturability of that product in a common digital thread. And this is going to be the decisive advantage that the U.S. manufacturers have. What's important about DMDII is you want to replicate the ecosystem that you see out there in industry today. Because if it's too futuristic and too far out, and Fortune 500 companies and small mid-sized enterprises come in, and they can't understand how they scale from what they see to where they have to go, it becomes prohibitive in their technology roadmap. So what's been done at DMDII is the ecosystem becomes really the powerful part of that. Okay, thank you.
All right, so, and since I've got the chair here today, I'm going to pitch in with PowerAmerica and some of the things we've done. And so we talk a lot about the technology and how important that is, and that really is the underpinning of a lot of what we're trying to accomplish. But there's also a big element of really just pure business development here. You know, how do you put people together? How does that map occur without people knocking on doors, getting together, getting to know each other, know what their needs and doubt are? We put a technology in and modernized an old 6-inch silicon foundry in Texas that is basically obsolete, not cost competitive anymore. And we did help them with partnerships and put some equipment in there, and we're able to get them qualified with the help of the university's faculty and some very talented industry partners, get their line qualified to run silicon carbide, right, in that foundry. And it's at the cutting edge at a 6-inch. So here we had a baseline and we're able to modernize very quickly. And within the end of our first budget period, you know, at a conference coming up here, you know, every March, the big power electronics conference, they started booking orders to bill. And if you're in the business development world, booking to bill, that's real business. The rest of it is dreams. And so when you're starting to take orders and you know you're ready to go, so there's that aspect of what we do too, and that's the networking piece of what we're going to do. But I want to turn and talk about small businesses a little bit. And Jorg, I'll ask you to join me with some thoughts because you're a startup guy, right? You've done this the time before. But I can tell you that putting that foundry in there, we brag about 4 of our members in there, but there's 9 small businesses using that foundry right now. And I met one of them an hour before I went to get on the plane to come to D.C. because he came over and said, I'm ready to join PowerAmerica. I've been to your foundry. You guys got a good piece of work down there. So, Lord, talk about a little bit about startups and what you see they need.
Yeah, thank you very much, General. Thank you for having me here. So from a small company perspective, particularly in the biotech industry, what is very interesting is that the biggest value we generate is taking an idea and translating it into a therapy for people with diseases that have no solution quite now. What stands between this idea and testing this in the clinic is manufacturing. And if you think about Ken's slide where it says, well, we go from a one-to-one relationship to solve an issue to a network, much more powerful, and to a network of networks that is even more powerful. That's exactly the situation that a small company in the biotech sector is in. We're trying to solve a manufacturing issue and on a one-to-one relationship. If we had been so lucky before to have a Nimble that would be our ecosystem, our marketplace, so to speak, to meet with other small companies, to meet with the vendors that we so badly need to do manufacturing, and come up with the American way of making early phase clinical material to test the ideas of the small companies to the benefit of patients, of public health. That would have been an enormous accelerator. And I myself, I can't wait for Nimble to start working so I can get in there and do exactly that and accelerate our path from the scientific idea to a solution that goes to patients in a much more efficient way than we do it right now, basically in hand-to-hand combat.
So Kelvin, why don't you take that comment and talk, since you're the birthday boy here, talk about when you did your proposal, how did you put together these members? Because you've learned from all of us. And your value proposition must be awesome because you're getting great support across the community.
Well, there certainly was a lot of email and phone calls, to be blunt about it. But, you know, I think the value proposition for the different stakeholder groups certainly was based on who they were, whether they're a major manufacturer, supplier, academic, nonprofit, and so on. And they each had their own perspective. But I think the thing that really tied the various stakeholder groups together was a common and shared interest in trying to enhance patient access to new and improved medicines, time to market, if you will. So finding ways to bring the community together to innovate that will enhance that patient access. And the industry, the biotech industry, is not that old. It's only maybe 3 or 4 decades that the modern methods really led to the foundation of the industry. And in its early days, it was an industry characterized by a lot of academic and industry collaboration with smaller businesses trying to innovate and figure out how to create the manufacturing process for the first time that would allow safe and efficacious medicines to be made. But what we've seen over the last few decades as the industry has matured is that there's been some convergence on some of the manufacturing processes for some of these medicines. The way that a medicine is made in company A and the way that it's made in company B, they're unique at some level, but they're kind of similar. So what that means is there are still challenges, and so in order to solve those challenges, you now need to have an opportunity for organizations to collaborate and work together to create those innovations. It's the easy problems, one could argue, have been solved. The other sort of interesting thing about this industry is that there's a lot of new medicine formats that are being worked on, that are being tested, that are being researched, that show incredible promise to treat cancer, to treat other diseases. But they're so innovative that there are no commercial manufacturing processes established yet. So how do you go from the ability to make enough to test, to do the clinical trial, to being able to make a robust supply of that medicine? That's something that actually requires the collaboration of a lot of different stakeholders, as well as federal agencies and so on, to define those manufacturing methods to make sure that we can deliver those medicines.
Good. So I want to now turn, we talked about some of the larger institutes and how we're operating, and had some comments about, you know, the companies and some small businesses, but let's look at that whole supply chain, and let's address the supply chain. And if we got some specific illustrations of maybe even medium to small companies, not just like, Michael, you'd mentioned the little, being a small business, and I mentioned a little startup of 7 people, but what about those medium companies? Because there seems to be a bridge there that people struggle with. They've got some advantages being just on the south side of that, but when you get on the north side, man, you really struggle to compete with the big boys in there. You got some experience with that in UI?
We do. And it really is such a spectrum, and companies are coming at this new digitalization and manufacturing from all different perspectives and all different backgrounds. And I think building off the last conversation, I think it's really interesting to think about this. When you think about small and mid-sized companies, there's the small manufacturers and mid-sized manufacturers, and then there's also a really incredible and unique asset we have in the U.S., and that's our startup and entrepreneurial community. And when we talk to our global partners, they're telling us that's something that really is unique to the U.S., and we really have an opportunity to capitalize. And so there's actually a particular mid-sized manufacturing company, about a 6-year-old company based in Northwest Indiana, that I would say they started on the journey to digital manufacturing because they were collecting data off their machines. And so they had some data, but they didn't know what to do with it. And so we actually used that data as part of a hackathon back in July. And so brought the startup and entrepreneurial community to bear against this data to let them know what's actually happening with the machines. What is this data actually telling them about the performance of the machines? Are some of these machines about to fail, or they need to be thinking about maintenance? Are there some machines that they can actually, optimize and push a little bit further? Are there other machines that they actually need to retire? How do they really optimize their manufacturing shop floor? And so pairing them with these entrepreneurs and software developers in a hackathon, we will be able to actually give them some insights into that data. They're able to go back to Indiana. They're able to go and make some decisions about what they're going to do on their factory floor, and actually now use that data for the first time.
Mm-hmm. And I could tell you from my perspective, one of the things that you run into, and I mentioned the big company that went down to a little small startup, but what I've also found is some of the larger companies are looking for new opportunities, new supply. They're looking for new market segments, and they want to come in, and they know people from a relationship, and so they start going, I'm interested in that. I'll support him on that. He's got a proposal. He wants to try something. I'm behind him. Mm-hmm. Okay, can you put money where your mouth is? And y'all put some money down on it. Or I've got a faculty member that I want him to work with that faculty member that gave the presentation this morning, because that guy can solve the problem he's at. His quality's not quite where it's at. Those are the kind of substantial examples that we're kind of looking at. Kelly, you had an example.
Well, I was just going to piggyback on that. Is an excellent example of the multiplier effect, right? So it is helping that manufacturer as well as helping those entrepreneurs create a business for themselves. So it's a fabulous example.
So what I wanted to do is let's continue with talking about that collaborative environment, and I want to look at other resources outside of the immediate institutes that you start to see to play in any of those. So I will tell you one of mine is I use some other federal programs in mine. For example, I happen to be at a university, so we'd already been engaging with our manufacturing extension program. That's what a land-grant college does. And so when all of a sudden, the Department of Commerce puts out a proposal for, some integrating support with the extension programs with an institute, it took me about 10 minutes on the phone to say, hey, Phil, come on over. We need to have lunch because we got an opportunity. We want to partner. We were ready to go. I think when they came out and announced we awarded that, I had the Southwest Regional MEP guy up wanting to know what I was doing with 4 of his extension programs in there. So there again, our environment had that relationship, and all of a sudden here are complementary programs that you could work together. You have examples of some of those kind of things?
I'm happy to jump in, since we actually are in existence right now.
These guys are always shy.
So like you, Nick, we also partnered with the NIST MEP program, and so that means that we actually have someone who's accustomed to working with small manufacturers that's on site with us in Chicago. We've got another person that's on site in Indiana, and I think there might be another person soon. But this is an opportunity for us to work with a program that's in the business of working with small manufacturers across the U.S. And so we can really take advantage of how do we learn from the projects that we have, and how do we take the learnings from those projects and push it out into the supply chain. So I'll give you a specific example related to cybersecurity, which we're really excited about. There's a number of new standards that are coming out related to cybersecurity. In fact, contractors to, for example, the Department of Defense have new barriers or new requirements that they've got to adhere to in order to do business with the department going into next year. Many small manufacturers, small contractors don't understand how to make sure that they can adhere to these types of requirements. And if you realize that within manufacturing, it is actually the largest industry subject to cyber attacks and infrastructure in the U.S. $2 trillion of GDP is at risk because of manufacturing, and when you think about cybersecurity. And our institute is responsible for connecting factories and connecting supply chains. So we're just increasing the surface area to those kinds of attacks. So we want to arm the small manufacturers with the tools to be able to determine, are they compliant with these new requirements? Are they able to make changes and even be able to do white hat attacks and be able to understand what would it mean if there is a cyber attack on their factory floor, and be able to use that information to be able to be more competitive and be able to bid on more projects, for example. And so our plan is to actually use the MEP program and the relationships we're developing to be able to deploy these new technologies out to the suppliers who need to understand how to use them best.
Raj.
So let me just add to a comment to what Caralynn said on small and mid-sized enterprises. I think it's a misnomer to say that what large enterprise corporations do, small, mid-sized corporations can. It's cost prohibitive. So technology today is very scalable. And I want you to just think about something in your consumer life with a Nest thermostat, what it did to your furnace. Your furnace that was 15 or 20 years old, you hooked it up on Wi-Fi, you programmed it, it gave you all these algorithms, it knows your behavior, and the same concept in connected devices in factories is also true. There are going to be 1 billion connected devices by 2030. Sorry, 1 trillion connected devices by 2030. And this means that that there's going to be a lot of data moving around, and small and mid-sized enterprises can capitalize on the same digitalization, onboarding of assets, capabilities to generate data, understand data, be predictive with their assets that they have today as big companies can. And the technology is exactly identical. So I just think, again, part of what the Institute does is provide the ecosystem for supply chains of major corporations to come through and understand, again, what the art of the possible is. So when they're designing their next generation of products and they're doing their technology innovations and looking at their roadmaps, they design for what they know. And I think that those technologies are commercially available today. I mean, we can onboard assets for a couple $100 and put it up in the cloud, make it more intelligent, send it right back down to the factory floor. And that doesn't, it's agnostic to whether it's a small enterprise or a large corporation.
All right.
Yeah, I would love to pick up on the what you said about the standardization piece, because that to me is one of the absolute strengths of these national institutes. Very specific example out of the biotech industry is what many of us that have a little bit of gray hair in the manufacturing area got their gray hair from is variability in incoming raw materials. Our processes are very reliant on the quality of the incoming raw materials. When they vary, that has an impact on the product. And remember, we're not making consumer goods. Our products go into people. They go into your mother. They go to my sister. So the quality is of the absolute biggest focus that we have. So if the incoming raw material quality varies, the output quality is at risk. We deal with that in our industry, yet at the very on the left-hand side of the wonderful slide that we had here, kind of on a one-to-one scenario with our incoming raw material supplies. The strength of that institute, and in particular the correlation to NIST, is that we can now either come together as a nationwide infrastructure of biotech manufacturers, discuss those problems together as a team with the vendors, bring in NIST as the place that says, this is the way we do this in this country. And then create all of a sudden a certainty, right, that maybe prevents the next set of manufacturing at Biogen from getting gray hair. Mm-hmm. And so that's if you think about that in itself is worth the institute. Right?
And that statement is true for the business aspects of the partnerships. I would tell you, I've had a little company that had 20 sales outlets in there, and they looked to partner with a company that had 2 orders of magnitude more, because that was the limiter to them scaling their products out there, was those points of sale where they could actually get their product in the market. They know their product will sell. They just couldn't get it out there fast enough. There was too big a learning curve. So that's kind of neat. I'm going to shift to one more question. We're going to do that and then give you a chance to ask a few questions. And I'm going to just ask this one of Kelvin. And I'm going to just say, being new, I thought maybe it would be interesting for you to look at, compared to some of the other efforts. Goes back to the question the gentleman asked here, Kelly, of you when you were talking. But compared to some of the other countries, how much is the government investment in your brand new, one-day-old institute that I'm tickled to death to be a part of? How much has that affected you being able to pull this together?
It's a critical link. And on the one hand, you could look at the investment in financial terms and say, here's a catalyst to build some infrastructure and bring a community together. On the other hand, it's more than just the dollars, because the dollars aren't the majority of the projected expenses of the Institute. It's this sort of idea that it's a whole of government strategy to try to address the manufacturing innovation needs of the country. It's about the engagement with scientists from various federal agencies. It's about the engagement with health authorities. It's about the engagement across a broad spectrum of agencies. And so, you know, it is, in some of our conversations that we had as we were developing the team, at some point there was a conversation about, do we want the federal dollars and maybe some of the extra burdens that go with making sure you're good stewards of public money, or should we just try to create this consortium ourselves? And that was pretty quickly squashed by a lot of people saying, we also want their scientific expertise, we also want their partnership, and to have them help convene the community was really, I think, one of the most important features. That it would not have happened without that input and that catalyst.
And Kelvin, that's a term that, having been around for a while with it, that term has started to pick up, that convening authority of an institute, and having that authority for people to feel confident to come together instead of having to do that just handshake, you know, contract between two people, and that multiplying factor that you sort of shaped for us and got us all thinking about it, spawned a new word in my vocabulary. So I'm going to turn to the audience for questions, and Tammy from North Carolina Defense Business Association has a large question.
Drew is here.
Oh, fantastic. We're going to go on pause. Nick, you got that? Drew, come on, make your way up front. And Drew Wayne is the legislative director for Representative Tom Reed, and we're going to give you a couple of minutes to say hello to the group and share with us some of the thoughts from your congressman, and who is in essence leading this for us. So thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for the time, and thank you everyone for being here, and for the Senate Competitive Caucus for joining us in this briefing. I know the Congressman wished he could be here to congratulate all of you on the fine work and to see and hear firsthand all of the work that's been done since RAMI was signed into law. This was one of the most exciting processes that I've ever been a part of, and it really went to show through the entire way when we drafted the bill and moving it through committee and moving it through the floor process, and how it all finally came together, how bipartisan manufacturing policy really is, and when you can come together and focus on innovation and getting to that next generation of manufacturing technology, you're touching, you know, pressure points that conservatives, moderates, liberals, Democrats, Republicans, everyone can agree upon, and it's just really exciting to be a part of it and to watch these institutes mature. We've had the benefit of having two very close to our region with AIM Photonics and the Remade Center. So we're excited to see those get stood up and get to work, as well as having some affiliations in the advanced fabrics and textiles in coordination with MIT. So I'm not going to take up too much of your time. I know everybody wants to hear a little bit more about what the panel has to say. I just want to say thank you for attending, thank you for all your hard work, and look forward to continuing the conversation.
And please thank your boss for having us up on the hill today and for holding back the storm clouds too much, right? That would be great. So I was just